What makes a character annoying in Tekken? Some will say weird and confusing stances, others will say overpowered options. Everyone has their own reason for finding a character annoying. But one thing everyone can agree upon is this: matchup checks suck. Let's be real for a second. No one likes queuing up for some Tekken and running into a player who just spams random moves you've never seen before, and then getting absolutely demolished. It's a horrible feeling. And naturally, some characters lean into this more, let's just say, spammy playstyle far more than others. And then there's Eddy Gordo. Eddy has been the definitive obnoxious spam character for over 27 years in the eyes of millions of casual players. With one look at the character's moveset, it's pretty easy to see why. His kit revolves around his signature fighting style, that being capoeira, the Brazilian martial art revolving around dance and acrobatics. Basically, when you run into an Eddy, he's gonna breakdance in your face and mess you up. He's a character who, at most levels of play, revolves around stringing together a ton of attacks and going in and out of his stances to keep you guessing and mixing you up. This playstyle has been driving Tekken players crazy since his release back in Tekken 3 all the way to today. Eddy absolutely dominates casual play. In Tekken 3, it was his 3+4 that was the casual stomper. Eddy would just spam this jump attack that did like 70 damage, and everyone at the arcades would get instantly tilted.
Why is he lying on the ground? Fight like a mon! Fight like a mon, for God's sake!
In Tekken Tag 2, it was his back 1-4, being an insanely spammable counter hit launcher. There was a reason why Eddy was the most popular character online during this time. And here in Tekken 8, let's just say things haven't improved. A bot got to orange ranks by only pressing the 3 button in ranked. This was recorded all on Twitch. What other character could pull off something like that? That was insane. Despite being an incredibly recognizable legacy character, Eddy is absolutely hated in the larger Tekken community. You would be hard-pressed to find someone who enjoys fighting the character, outside of pro players. But why is that? He can't be hated that much just because he's a spammy character. I mean, there's plenty of other spammy characters in the game. What separates him from them? And what makes him so hated? I decided to find out, and after extensive research, and mashing the 3 button in ranked, I think I figured it out. So let's talk about it. Like I mentioned earlier, the nature of Eddy's design has always made casual players absolutely hate him. When you're playing a fighting game and your opponent is lying on the ground or using a million trip moves while doing a handstand in front of you, it's gonna feel awful, because most people have no idea what to do against it. This is the main reason Eddy Gordo gets so much hate here in Tekken 8. He's actually considered one of the weaker characters in the game right now, but for Tekken players who don't take the game super seriously and attend tournaments, that being 99% of the community, this just doesn't matter at all. Eddy has always been a major matchup check for most players. He's one of those characters where beating them without understanding his unique strings and stances almost feels impossible. You have to know the matchup or you're not going to have a good time against him under any circumstances. If you, yes you, watching, want to beat Eddy Gordo whenever you run into him, you need to sit down, lock in, and dedicate time to learn the matchup. And if you're too busy to do it like the rest of us, well, say goodbye to your ranked points. But what happens if you do take the time to understand him? Well, you'll realize very quickly why so many good Tekken players call the character weak and underwhelming, and why you don't see him doing well in tournaments very often. Almost every single one of these strings you struggle with, those setups, those flowcharts you don't understand, those random lows that never seem to stop against him, have clear and direct counterplay that if you know what to do against it, are actually pretty terrible options. The key to everything is just knowledge. Once you have the knowledge, the character just falls apart. This is why you'll hear people saying they respect strong Eddy players so much, because using this character in the top level of competition, where every player knows every matchup, is one of the hardest experiences you can have in competitive Tekken. Once Eddy loses his tricks, he becomes a very honest and difficult character, just working with what little he has. Sorry to quickly interrupt, but this video is brought to you by Uber Eats. I'm sure you guys all know about Uber Eats. They're the premier online food ordering and delivery platform, and is an absolute lifesaver for me. Sometimes when I'm grinding Tekken Ranked, I don't want to leave the house for food. I just want my favorite foods to come straight to me, and that's what Uber Eats is all about. They've given me a special deal just for you guys. You can use the code BOOGARD15 to get $15 off your first $20 order, or click the link in the description. You save money while also directly supporting the channel. What's not to like, right? So make sure to check out the link in the description and use my promo code for big savings. Thanks to Uber Eats for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to it. So many of his iconic tools were heavily nerfed coming into Tekken 8. His down forward 2 was nerfed, no longer being a counter hit launcher. His relaxed stance lost pretty much all of its evasion. His iconic back 1-4, I know you guys see this string a lot, is a shadow of its former self. This move single-handedly made him one of the most hated characters in all of Tekken Tag 2, but here in Tekken 8, it no longer gives him a launch on counter hit, and if you block the first hit, you can easily sidestep it and punish, because he's now forced to go into stance. So much of this stuff is very easy to deal with, you just need the knowledge. His 50-50 that Eddy's trying to force you into after his 10-frame punish is fake. You can just step back and avoid both options, and both are very, very punishable. There's just so much to exploit on him. But here he is, still hated, because it's Eddy. The average Tekken player isn't extensively labbing out characters, and you really can't expect them to. We've got busy lives, and unfortunately that means there's always going to be some characters who are just frustrating to fight for most players. And again, that is Eddy Gordo. You can't really blame people for not liking a character when they just are never able to beat them in ranked, always having no idea what's going on, and when they complain about it, they're told they need to spend a bunch of time they don't have labbing. It's a pretty normal reaction to dislike characters like this, at least in my opinion, and it's unfortunately pretty unavoidable. Like I said, there's always going to be characters like this. There are other things we could talk about, like how Namco is now restricting the new replay takeover feature, which is perfect for figuring out how to beat Eddy, by the way, to people who paid for the DLC. If you don't own Eddy, you can't even go back to your own replays and control your own non-DLC character to figure out how to beat him. This probably doesn't help with the hate the character gets, to be honest, and I've criticized Bandai Namco heavily for this. It makes no sense. People want to learn how to fight these characters, you should make it available with your big new feature. But yeah, unfortunately, Eddy is just a character who is designed to be hated by most Tekken players. That's the unfortunate reality of characters in fighting games who have very unique playstyles. His reliance on string and stance mix-ups mean that if you want to beat him, you need to put in the time, and most Tekken players will simply never do that. It's a lot easier to complain about a character online than it is to lab them. That's just the reality of things. I know I've definitely been one of those people who've complained about characters I don't understand, instead of taking the time to lab them and actually learn how to do the matchup. We all do it sometimes. We're all human, everyone likes complaining sometimes. Despite this, I can't help but feel bad for Eddy and his core player base. Most Tekken players don't understand how hard Eddy players have to work in competitive play to succeed on this character. It was the same in Tekken 7, but especially here in 8, where he's in my opinion even weaker. He's just a bag of tricks, and admittedly he's a very big bag of tricks, there's a lot of stuff to learn, but once you put in the time, he's left to be pretty underwhelming. It's really cool to see people stick with him, even despite the hate and the character being weak overall. He's much higher on the popularity chart than I thought, about right in the middle. His fans just really love this guy. And I mean, looking at the character without the bias we all have every time we get demolished by one in ranked, he's a pretty damn cool character. He has an amazing design, and is such a cool concept for a fighting game character. Seeing capoeira animated this fluidly in a video game is awesome. Like, look how cool this is. You can tell they put in a ton of work developing him, making him feel amazing in the new Tekken 8 engine. And they've also done a great job modernizing him for Tekken 8, with a new install meter he gets every time he lands a combo or a hell sweep. If you're an Eddy player, don't let the hate on the character get to you. At the end of the day, all that matters is that you're having fun with your character. Don't let anyone else's opinion get in the way. I have huge respect for you Eddy players. Even though I don't like fighting your character, I'll lab him one day, and hopefully when I do, I'll stop losing all my rank points to you Eddy players. But yeah, that's about all I've got for this video. Let me know in the comments what you think about Eddy and which character you want to see me cover next. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe to support more scripted Tekken 8 content like this. And don't forget, you can use code BOOGARD15 for $15 off your first $20 order on Uber Eats. It goes a long way in supporting the channel. As always, big thanks to my YouTube members and Patreon patrons. Your support means the absolute world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.